First off, I have to start with an apology because there's not as much meat in this as I had hoped to get. A couple of weeks ago, I found out some problems with PG upgrade on Windows, just like 4 days before the before we froze the release, and that kind of upset my timing. Took me several days to get on top of that. So, anyway, we'll talk about this. So, here's the problem. Yep. Okay. Problem is you want some DDL for some object, and remembering what the syntax for it can be hard. You have an object and you just want to know what you need to do to create it. Now, the case I normally use this for is to use it as a template for creating something else. But there are a number of uses for it. There are 30-ish commands for various create commands in the Postgres dialect, and a bunch more that are created with alter table and so on as well. So there's quite a lot to remember. So it's quite easy to it makes things a lot easier if you can actually see and see what the DDL to create an object is. One solution is to use pgadmin 3. pgadmin 3 is quite a good client, and people on Windows particularly like it because the psql client doesn't work terribly well on Windows unless you're using Cygwin. I tend not to use it. Most Linux users that I know don't use it, although some do. And it's quite nice because you can just click on an object and it will show you the SQL. It's kind of handy, and I've had developers who have often cut and pasted that straight into migration scripts and so on, and it works quite well. However, if you don't use pgadmin 3, then it's kind of a heavy-handed way of getting the SQL for an object. And the other thing is that it's not very good for scripting or building utilities based on being able to get the DDL for an object. It's only good really for interactive use. Bruce? Yeah. Sure, and yeah, it's really nice. But as I say, it's if you don't use pgadmin 3, I tend to use pgadmin 3 either when I'm on Windows or when I want to explore a very large database schema. But for normal everyday use, I don't use it, and most developers I know don't use it. And I don't want to have to fire it up just so I can get the DDL. So the next solution is to use PGdump, and you can use PGdump in sometimes you have to either have to look through the output from PGdump, or you can use the list and use list commands on PGdump on a dump you already have to get the DDL. But there are quite a lot of reasons why this is not a very good way of doing this. Here's what you really want. You want a bottle of beer. That is to say, you want the DDL for one object. And this is what you get with PGdump, right? Well, there's nothing wrong with that. But if all you want is this, This is not the solution. Now, and it's kind of, and again, it's kind of heavy-handed way of getting the DDL. PGdump really sucks for this purpose. The SQL that you get from it can be kind of funky because it does, funny things with OIDs and table spaces, and it's not even terribly consistent. It does funny things with creating constraints because it always creates the constraints afterwards because it's basically designed as a dump tool. This is, to get all the DDL for a given object is not what PGdump is designed for. And so can we make PGdump better? We probably could, but we really shouldn't. This is what we're going to get if we do. Right? We're going to have lipstick on a pig. So let's instead have something that's actually designed for the purpose. We're going to have a bunch of database functions. You can load them in the database. It's an extension. Thank you, Dimitri. And you can just call it for one object and get the required DDL. And it should be, and it doesn't need to take any locks. One of the problems with PGdump can be, particularly if you're taking a dump of a database that has got a heck of a lot of objects, is that it can take some locks which actually it can cause problems with your ongoing processing because they take a little while. So this tool is designed to take no locks whatsoever. It's going to give you the DDL for just one object, and it'll just give it to you just like that, instantly, pretty much. So here's what we're going to have. We're going to have a Postgres extension. We're going to have something or other. DDL is going to be the function name to get the DDL for an object. The first object is always going to be the object name. And there are going to be some other objects, other arguments, which we'll see. Actually, at this stage, I'm going to take you for a little tour. So let's create a database. Can you all see that, or does that need to be larger? All right. How's that? Big enough? Okay. All right, so we're going to create. Now, the first thing is that if you want to see this displays best when you if you do this, you're not going to see those annoying little pluses at the end of every line. So let's create a table. Now, let's load the extension. And now let's look at the DDL for that table. And there it is. So far, so good. Let's add, now the first thing to note is we have this, there's a different mode called canonical mode. we're using the named argument form of function here. And this does a couple of things different, as you can see. The first thing it does different is that it actually puts the schema name on the table, and it does that because we want the output in canonical mode to be the same no matter what our search path is. That's going to be kind of useful for building utilities which will do things like checking if anything's changed on a table or something like that. You don't want that to be dependent on any settings. The other thing is you don't want it to be dependent on the default with OIDS parameters, which is why it also comes out and tells us that with OIDS is false. That's actually one of the things that I tend to find a little bit annoying about the pgadmin output, is that it always seems to tell you the OIDS setting. So in the non-canonical form, basically that is suppressed here, but if in the canonical form, we tell you everything about the table. If there were a table space setting, it would tell you what the table space is. If there's nothing output, that would tell you, it's the default. If there were any other settings on the table, it would also tell you. Okay, so now let's alter the table. And add a primary key. Where am I? There. Okay, so we notice here that now X is, because we added a primary key on X, it's acquired the not null constraint. If we use a different argument here and we say all constraints is true, it will actually show us that primary key constraint as well. If there were, and that will show you unique constraints, exclusion constraints, foreign keys, if you use this option as well. So using this, you can get pretty much the whole definition of a table. That's the yeah. Okay, serial is one of the things I'm still working on. I hope to get it to the stage where it's actually going to output serial here on a column. Yeah. We're not going to know what the original definition is because you might have added a serial later on, right? So it can only reflect what the current state is. But yeah, my idea is that if you had everything set up so that it, with an own sequence and the right names and everything, so that if you had said serial, it would come out with the same thing, then this will output serial. Now that's something that PGdump doesn't do, and it's kind of tricky to do. So I'm not actually promising that yet, but it's on my list. Yes. Okay. Now table DDL is actually a kind of gateway function because it will actually output the DDL for just about anything that is a is a table, not just plain tables like this. It will actually output the DDL for a foreign table, a typed table, a sequence, an index, just about anything you can actually get. But there are also DDL functions for those specific objects as well. At least we've got past the lightning talk stage. Okay, so let's just do one more thing. Let's say table G1 alter check. Oh no. We'll add a check constraint, and now check constraints actually will always show. Excuse me. So that the all constraints thing is only needed for extra things like indexes, foreign keys, and so on. The things that are effectively supported by indexes. Okay, so now at this stage, let's go back to here and see where we got to. Okay, excuse me. So we talked about canonical form. Essentially, it's designed to ignore your settings for default with voids and search path, and there may be some other things that I come across as I keep going with the development of this that will be reflected in there as well. Those are the things I've come across so far. Probably things like text search configuration and others will be added. Anything that you can set in a set command, basically, we want to be able to abstract away so that we can always get the same DDL no matter what our settings are. And that's kind of important because one of the intended use cases for this is that you can very easily take the DDL for this, for instance, and take a checksum of it and compare it against some stored checksum for an object, or do a diff of it against a stored value in a table. One of the things that people want to be able to do is to see if there have been any inadvertent or malicious changes in the definition of database objects, and this is designed to be able to let you do this fairly easily. Okay, as I said, table DDL acts like a traffic cop. There's also a thing I'll show you in a second called NonConstraint Index DDL, which will give you all the indexes, effectively secondary indexes on the table for things that don't support constraints. So basically, here's where I've got so far. I've got pretty much all the table type things covered. I've got views covered. And as you might be aware, in 9.2, made a change to make the display of views a whole lot nicer in PSQL and other places, so that instead of running all the fields together in one great big long line, it breaks them up. We can get triggers, we can get table spaces. I had hoped this week to cover all of this list on the right-hand side, and unfortunately I have not. I'm currently working on types and domains. I've just about got schemas done. The others should be done fairly shortly. And then after that, we have all of this other stuff to go. So there's a bunch of work to be done. As I say, I apologize for not having got more of it done. Apart from object types, some of the things we want to cover, serial is a big one. We want to be able to add data that will pick up the comments and descriptions on all the database objects. You can comment on pretty much everything in a database, and a lot of people use that for documentation and so on. That will I'm trying to work out whether or not to dump that automatically or make that another named option on these functions. We want to pick up all the ACLs. Bruce was saying that it's nice in pgadmin. Yes, we want to make it look just as nice here, so that you can see the permissions on tables nicely. And I need to pay some attention to things like whether whoever the user is should actually be able to see this object or not. Now, since this is basically just, these aren't security definer functions or anything, so if people can see it, they can, they could run this SQL themselves. All I'm doing is providing it, this in effect can. So I don't think there are any real security issues here, but I'm going to have to go and double check and think about that. So the implementation is currently in PLPG SQL. It runs pretty quickly. I'm not too concerned about speed. There are a few bits and pieces that you can't get. For instance, and PGdump obviously won't give you the description of a temp table, because it doesn't have any temp tables, right? But it might be nice to, if you ask for the DDL for a temp table, to have it to show the on-commit behavior of that table. That's actually, as far as I can tell, not available at all at the SQL level. So to get that, I would need to have some sort of C function which would actually, which given a temp table would tell me what the behavior is. We'll probably have to pull it out of the somewhere in shared memory or something. not shared memory, it'd be local memory, but I forget exactly where, but I can dig it out. But that's one of the things, and there are probably a few others that will need a little bit of C. So I'm not. I haven't quite decided whether I'm just going to leave, rewrite all of it, or just rewrite a few little bits and pieces in C yet. That's for a little bit down the track. Okay, I have not tried at all to do anything about backwards compatibility. At the moment, this is written for Postgres 9.2, and it's heavily dependent on the catalog. One of the things about, if you've ever looked at any of the code for PGdump, is it's fairly baroque code, and part of the reason for that is that it's got compatibility features going all the way back to Postgres 7.0. I think we've had discussions in the past about removing some of that and bringing it up to 7.2 or 7.4 or something like that. But it becomes fairly difficult to read if you have to support a lot of versions. I'm basically expecting to have to put out a version of this for each release. So because I don't want to have to have a lot of code that says if version is this, do that, and so on and so on. It quickly makes the code become fairly unreadable. I've also got another couple of goodies that I'll just mention as I'm going along. I actually considered putting this into, yeah, Peter. Well, it's designed to be available for all clients. I mean, pgadmin's got its own, will already give you the DDL for most, and I actually discussed that kind of at the beginning, but yeah, you can get the DDL for pretty much anything already in pgadmin. Yeah, but I mean, these functions are, since this is an extension, it'll be available. Now, if pgadmin wants to sort of load it and provide an interface to it, when I make this available, then they're welcome to. These are a couple of things that I was actually did a little while ago, and I was considering bringing these in, but since they're not strictly DDL, I'm actually going to publish them in a separate repository. But essentially, the first one will take a given table and create a skeleton select query for you. This is actually kind of nice if you cut and paste queries for large tables. I mean, one of my clients I see sitting down here tends to have tables that have got hundreds of columns, and it's kind of nice to be able to make a select query again, to generate a skeleton query against that, and then just cut out the bits and pieces that you want. And it will actually show you the types and so on of those as comments as well. The other one is will make a list for you, which is useful for, from a type, which is useful for set returning functions. However, that's really not the, as I say, I will make those available fairly shortly in a separate SQL utilities repository. The basic idea of this is to enable it to be used as a building block. It's not intended as a PGdump competitor. I'm expecting, after I get this finished, to start work on building a schema integrity checking tool, which will use this as its base. It might be nice to build this or something like it, or to be able to, into psql / commands. The problem is that we can't really make PSQL dependent on something that's not part of the core. And building psql / commands, basically the only way to do it currently is to hard code that in C. So it actually might be one idea I had was that it might be nice if there were a scripting language, JavaScript, for instance, which is the hot language du jour, might be a good case into PSQL, but that's just kind of blue sky speculation. But it might be. I think it would be really good as a general principle to be able to have PSQL generate, have some / commands to generate DDL. It's one of the. I think it's probably one of the most requested things that I've ever seen on IRC is, how do I get the definition of this object? And we always say, oh, well, run PGdump, but that's really a terrible answer. So, I mean, to have a / command in PSQL do it would really, particularly for newbie types, would be really terrific. Yeah. Yeah, might be possible. Reg DDL. Yeah, possibly. It sounds like a hack, though. It might be possible. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Rigproc and regclass are very useful, and they're used in the code for this. I mean, most of these parameters are in fact regclass parameters. They're not text parameters. The names, right? They're regclass parameters. So, but there might be a possibility. I mean, I think you would probably. I'm not even sure, though, that we could do it because I'm not sure that the OIDs are necessarily guaranteed sufficiently unique. Well, but you're doing this across catalogs, or across tables. I mean, they're only guaranteed unique within a given table, right? Oh, so you want reg table DDL and reg trigger DDL and reg. Yeah. Maybe. Might be worth thinking about. I mean, part of the reason for giving this talk is to get ideas. So, yeah, it's certainly worth thinking about. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it might be possible. Yep. Yep. We'll just say max equals true, yes. Yeah. Kitchen sink option. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Might well be possible. Yes, Josh. Yep. Correct. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, all the constraints, or I mean, do you want not null and check out as well? Okay. If you don't use the all constraints parameter, it won't give you any of that in the table definition. Oh, because there's a. All right, let me show you. Um, Yep. Like that. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So, yeah, uh, this sort of use case is precisely why I put this one in, so that if you got just the basic table definition without using the all constraints option, then you could just get the constraints later. Yeah. Yeah, Jim. When did you say you want this? Uh, um, it actually does use tabs, but yeah, I mean, it might be possible. I mean, I would hesitate at adding too many style parameters, but it might be possible to have one or two. If you want to drop me an email or something that sort of says these are the ones you want, then I'll have a look at it. Yeah, Simon. I'm sorry. Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, the real thing is, if we're going to have it in core, then you really want to have it right in core, because you want to be able to use it in PSQL. If you're going to have it in core, let's have it in, let's create these functions and get them in PSQL. And really, I mean, I'm kind of agree. I don't know what you think, Bruce, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. Yeah. Yeah. No, the ACL display is awful, and I mean, I have to look up the thing of what they mean every time. You're right. Yes. I mean, and if I have to do it, it must be really terrible for somebody who's on their third day in using Postgres. So yeah, I mean, yes, you're right. Okay, that's a good point. Let's take that on board, and we'll I'll try to get this to a completed state, and then sort of say, okay, well, can we? Now that would probably mean rewriting them in C, but that's doable. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is a few hundred lines of PGSQL. No, no, and there's a lot of boilerplate in it too to do the canonical stuff that just gets repeated after function after function. So yeah, the queries are not, and I just stole a bunch of the SQL from some of it came from PGdump and some of it came from PSQL. There's just nothing terribly magical about it. Okay, so I'm not sure where I am here. Well, so that's basically it. So my plan is to kind of finish this up and put it on a repository on Bitbucket sometime in the next few weeks. And if you watch my blog, I'm surprised. Yeah. Yeah, sure. But yeah, there's the URL for my blog. The and once we do that, then perhaps once I get this to a state where it's sufficiently done, then maybe we should start that discussion, Simon, and say, okay, well, let's take this to the next level. Yeah, although maybe what you want is probably some separate. I mean, those /d commands are so overloaded. You're probably going to want to do, like a capital D or something, I just don't want to add anything more to them because they're just, I can't remember all the different things now for them. Yeah. Okay. All right, so thank you very much.